Thanks for joining me, Jessie Hetal, right here on an episode of The Nation, a show where we'd like to talk about topics that truly concern each and every one of us across the nation. Today we look at the 100 days of completion of the new government of a new Malaysia. That's right, Malaysians voted for change, but has it been that easy? Today we look at it at a different perspective, perhaps from an organizational perspective. And for that, my guest in the studio with me is Hetal Doshi. She's an organizational psychologist, and she's here to tell us about the change that has happened perhaps in different types of shapes, sizes, and especially looking at what organizations truly want in terms of moving forward. Have they changed enough, or is that still a long road ahead? Welcome, Hetal, to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a perfect time to be here.
That's right. So much to talk about, especially today being 100 days. I mean, it is report card day.
Yeah.
From your personal observation, there has been so many things that has led up to this big change that we saw this year. What is, in your opinion, one of the biggest changes that we can recognize from an organizational perspective?
So, you know, having dealt with several organizations across the board, the change has been quite significantly different across the board. So for some organizations, there has been radical change, and fortunately or unfortunately, it has, you know, led to the displacement or replacement of leaders. And for these organizations that have come about, you know, have had change imposed on them through the movement of their leaders, unfortunately, I think for some of these companies, I think trust has become one of the biggest issues that they're experiencing, and also in this space of unknown. So we don't know what's going to happen to us. We don't know what's going to happen to business leaders, and we don't know what's going to happen to the organization. That can be very unsettling for quite a significant fair few of them. So I think there is an opportunity for, you know, ministry or government to engage more with organizations that are going through these changes, because it can be very unsettling. But at the same time, it is very important, because when you use a broad broom to sweep and clean up for a new future, some of these things are bound to happen. So I think it's a great time. And pain is obviously the mother for all kind of positive transformation, I would assume. There's a second category of businesses where this transformation has been extremely inspiring for them. So say, for example, the telcos, when they, you know, meet a minister like Gobind Singh Dio, and they talk about the future of digital technologies in communications, it has led to a lot of comments saying that it's extremely inspiring, and they feel that the government's very intelligent now. So for them it's intelligence, for them it's inspiring, and for them there's opportunities to collaborate, which really makes this transformation a lot more exciting. And this is how transformation should be, you know.
That's right.
Rather than the pain, moving towards enthusiasm. There's a third category of companies that, you know, we've observed that have for them basically it's business as usual, nothing has changed. And for these organizations, I feel the most sorry for, because this is, you know, Harvard Business School would not have a case study like this.
Yeah.
You know, this is an epic story. David versus Goliath in many forms. David versus Goliath, you know, Mahathir conquering himself, Mahathir conquering people around him, and conquering the whole nation. There's so many lessons to be learned. So when I hear of organizations that have put on, like you said, blinkers, and just saying that business as usual, it is a hugely missed opportunity, I think, to kind of pull in some of these principles of transformation, or even leverage and engage potentially to use this as leverage for themselves going forward.
But on that note itself, everyone is resistant to change, whether it's at home, at school, at the workplace, more so an organization that has hundreds, if not thousands of people who are involved. Could organizations take this ride, and can they just take it in their stride and embrace it all so easily? Or are they also waiting for change to happen from perhaps a grassroots level, if not a higher level? Because again, it's not something that can happen overnight.
Yeah, I love your question. It's really about this whole movement of transformation, which is one of the scariest things in life. And you know what you're talking about is resistance to change, and what will help to propel this. That's the question, right? So it is very normal. I mean, as a psychologist, we look at the brain as the most phenomenal aspect of transformation. And we are all given an amygdala, which is designed to protect us, especially when we assume a situation is one of threat. And I think for business leaders who are assuming, I don't think that business leaders are necessarily assuming that this is threatening for them, but they may just feel like, I'm not 100% sure what to do over here. So relaxing the amygdala is a critical component of being able to conquer this going forward. So the only way, this is going to sound very geeky now, but the only way to relax the amygdala is to engage more with the scenario. And so I think the only thing that would expedite the movement for some of the business leaders who might be resisting or waiting is to just take that extra step, just take one step forward, engage with it, and then you probably will gain a little bit of momentum.
Whether it's confidence or trust.
Absolutely. And I think from what I've been hearing, we've been having a lot of conversations with people who've been engaging with the government, is that there is this power of vulnerability that the new government is bringing, which means that I feel vulnerable being in the government because you're as powerful as I am and I want to listen to you. So I think a lot of people who have been engaging with the ministry have found that their ideas can be listened to, and it has become a point of potential future collaboration. So I think anyone who's not sure, easiest thing is to engage and start to ask. Then a new hormone called oxytocin, which is a love hormone. So I feel connection, I feel love, and once that hormone is released, it actually counterbalances all the adrenaline. And this is when you feel the true rush of enjoying the next phase of transformation.
What are these impacts on organizations that have perhaps employees who are pretty much more senior versus new organizations or more youth-oriented organizations? Because that in itself would mean a very different approach.
So I think there are different types of organizations: legacy organizations, traditional organizations, the digital nomads who are already there before Pakatan Harapan came in, and for them it's like, yes, we've been waiting for you, you took too long. So I think companies that have already had that mindset of newness, of a new era, are really enjoying this, and the others are really struggling. So youthfulness, or the ability to look at the reality of things and have had already taken action before this change, would have put you at a very, very strong footing. So, some of my favorite companies that I always talk about would be companies like Digi. They're very young happening, but it's not that all the employees are young. It's a youthful company, so because they're light. 100% the culture.
Well, you obviously have your pulse on the ground, and you know exactly what's going on with some of these sort of new age, whether it's employees or employees who are dealing with within organizations. But today is the 100 day, or rather 100 days up for the new government. It's a report card day. What are some of the senses you're picking up from those on the ground, whether they come from a business leader perspective or an employee perspective? What is the change people are looking for if they haven't already had it?
I think the 100-day report card is a pretty tough one to have met to begin with. Obviously, when did the 100 days start? The day that he was, sworn in. But his team was really ready only about 2 months after that. So I know, how fair is that? However, so there are 2 points of view for this. Number one, majority of people are like, we trust them anyway. They're doing a good thing. So just leave them alone. Have some compassion. Don't be a critic. Just join the forces. Don't look at the report card. They're doing the right thing. And I think a lot of management gurus and even, psychologists who are really looking at the new way of working, they're really looking at whether you're trusting the way that the person is handling the situation, and you therefore trust that would lead to the outcome as more important as the outcome in itself. So I think we have 2 groups of people. One who are very trusting in that process and saying, they're doing the right thing. It's better they do the right thing slowly than to try to meet the mark and then have cut corners along the way.
What does this kind of big shift, for example, do to the psyche of an employee? Someone who is perhaps way down that chain, or someone who needs to transform his team?
So the second part then, when you go back down to an organization, funny chats happen, right? So when I talk to people and ask them, like, what do you think about the 100-day report card? Tun Mahathir hasn't met, his KPIs and stuff. They're like, can you imagine if we didn't meet our KPI? Imagine if we were supposed to deliver and we didn't. Can you imagine if we were the ones who didn't deliver? So I think, forget about what employees think, what organizations think, what I think, what the government thinks. I think the new Malaysia needs to set some guiding principles as to who they are and how they're going to deliver things. And one of the most important things to have in this are certain types of standards, non-negotiable standards. This shouldn't be a marriage of convenience, right? Like, we are now here and we are conveniently over here now. And it comes to a point where, there are so many challenges that we're facing right now, and so therefore we couldn't meet it. So it's not about convenience, it's also about, you said you're going to do something. So there are two minds about this. One is, we trust you, go for it. Okay, it's okay you didn't mean it. The other part of it is, what are you telling us then about your behavior? So I know there's some people who are saying that, they should apologize and stuff like that. So my perspective is more like, what is the guiding principle? The guiding principle probably should be trust and the ability to deliver.
And who decides on what that principle
I think
is for each and every organization? Is it a sort of a blanket a rule, or would it be sort of more
So
individual?
if you look at FedEx, for example, if you look at Domino's, right, their guiding principle is on-time delivery. If I don't deliver within 20 minutes, I don't care. Come rain, come shine, if I didn't deliver, I apologize, and there are consequences for that behavior or non-performance. So I think I think it is too harsh to judge Pakatan Harapan in 100 days. However, I think they can afford to build in some guiding principles and then also move into consequences of behavior or non-performance at some stage.
But let's look at that in itself, behavior and non-performance. Not just for those in sectors, for example, like those you've mentioned, whether they are in the client servicing line of business or something more private like a bank, but what about government institutions or government agencies themselves? I mean, after 61 years, they now have a new, perhaps even a new culture is going to be introduced.
100%,
How do they revamp themselves?
I think this is, this is a very deep question. How are you going to reinvent yourself, especially when it's such a huge blow? I'd like to go back maybe to Tun Mahathir and coming back to the analogy of David and Goliath. If you really look at someone like Tun Mahathir, imagine how deeply he would have had to think about how he was going to conquer everything. So the amount of thinking required in it must have been fantabulous. He had to conquer himself, and he had to be non-egoistic. He had to collaborate with enemies, and he had to consistently do the right thing so often that it created that impact. And I think when organizations now, pain again is the mother for transformation, which is a great thing for government, I guess, or government-linked companies. They're going to be forced to do it, which is better than all the other times that they wished that they were doing it. So now they're going to be forced to do it. And I think what Pakatan Harapan or Tun Mahathir has done extremely well is he has taken a long time to come up with the right people, I guess with the right belief and probably the ability to bring in the right experiences that can expedite this culture reform. However, whenever culture needs to be reformed, there first needs to be a burning platform. You need to kill a lot, you need to clean a lot, and you need to become extremely clear about a very purposeful version of your truth all over again. And then you need to repeat until everybody's on board. So this is not easy. It is so easy for us to have a chat about what they should be doing. And in fact, I think a lot of the critics should really be with them, helping them rather than, criticizing what they're doing. So I think it's going to be tough, but pain will be the pinnacle of acceleration for them. Yeah. And I'm sure that he's picking the right people who would bring in the right experiences, hopefully, to be able to maneuver that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we take a quick breather. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right here on The Nation.
Medical awareness at your fingertips. Surgical procedures and understanding the human body. Critical conditions need critical answers. Catch us on Medical Today to find out more on Ramsay's Time Derby Healthcare, only at Bernama News Channel.
Brings you the latest in current affairs, lifestyle and entertainment, as well as one-on-one discussions with fascinating personalities. Only on Bernama News Channel.
Hi there, welcome back to The Nation. My guest in the studio with me today is Hetal Doshi. She's an organizational psychologist, and we've been talking about change, not just for the new Malaysia, but what kind of change is ongoing within organizations as well. And she's established with, while some have are perhaps still in limbo, they haven't taken any particular stand in changing or reinventing themselves, there have been organizations that have done so, whether it's through an internal change or waiting for external factors to motivate them to change. But all quite deep and yet quite interesting as well. Hetal, let's look at the new pledge that has been met by the new government. For example, the new policy where 2% EPF for housewives have been deducted from the spouse's 11%, or rather that is the plan. Just like that, in future, in your opinion, what are some other policies we can perhaps foresee or are hopeful that will take place within an organization that can truly benefit the employee?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, I think congratulations to them for implementing something like that. It really is a beacon of hope that a lot more other things can come into play. Say, for example, something that they can immediately do after that is, if the husband is the one at home and he's the house husband, because I've heard this on the news that the house husbands don't have that privilege.
Yeah.
I would say, I think let's let common sense prevail and let that happen to the house husbands too. Quite immediately, because I think the ultimate thing that we're hoping for is that within organizations we will have the best talent who feel at their level best to be able to deliver at the level best. That brings Malaysia to the highest level. And that sometimes means that the women might be at work and the husbands might be at home as well.
Yeah.
And I think let common sense mostly prevail in that format as well.
What really motivates an employee, or what kind of influences them, whether it's emotionally or to get them going within an organization that's already so complex and sometimes perhaps too structured as well? How do you bring about that sort of aspiration for an employee to have that renewed vigor in line with New Malaysia?
Yeah, I think in line with New Malaysia, and then the organizations would be, number one, do you believe in me? So I think Tun Mahathir and Pakatan Harapan created that thing that I believe in you. So I think when employees go to work, they must feel like they believe in the organization and what the organization is what cause they are fighting for, and what is the purpose of it. So do I believe in you is one very important thing. The next thing is, do you care about me? Do you care about me? So when I think New Malaysia, or a lot of people who voted for Pakatan Harapan, feels like they were listened to and that they were cared for. But I would extend it to one more, which is where I think Pakatan Harapan is going to be moving into, and where organizations obviously should move into as well, which is, do you motivate me to take all the right actions as well? So are you activating my energy? So number one, do I believe in you, which is the thinking? Do I feel? Do you care for me? And the third part is, am I activated to do? So think, feel, act. And I think coming aligned with what EPF has done are all these laws or privileges of sorts, or not really privileges, these things need to be put into place so that employees can really be at their level best.
Yeah.
And I think, Hannah Yo is working obviously very closely with Wan Aziza as well to put in commonsensical things like, as human beings, you have a baby, your husband is working, your wife is working, where do you put the baby? And you want your child to feel safe. And I think the government, sometime in January, if I'm not wrong, they're hoping to have a childcare centre that is looked after well.
Yeah.
And this could definitely help employees, because a lot of people that I speak to, they would wake up at 5:30 in the morning just to make logistical arrangements to send their kids there, send their spouse
And then
to work.
be expected to perform at 100%.
Absolutely, while being worried about the condition or the state of the child. And then, the process continues after that, where they have to pick up the child, pick up the spouse, come back home. And even worse, Malaysia has this amazing capability of extending work hours. And so if a particular spouse may have to end up working late, you've got a whole... And this is a very simplistic way of understanding a typical household and certain laws and policies that should be in there. I think another law, if I could, or policy that should be in there is true democracy and equal rights. I think things like child marriage, LGBTQ, these are policies that we're still waiting for answers to. And I think if we have guiding principles, I think a friend of mine was telling me that he experienced Canada. And with Canada, they had decided that the number one thing that they would put on top of their value principle or their guiding principle would be respect. And so because respect was at the top, all complexities like LGBTQ, if it is a complexity at all,
That's right.
or child marriages, which has a political, religious or social kind of implication, all of these things which were previously very complicated and can take very long time to lobby, becomes a very easy thing to govern.
Because you have those principles
Exactly.
and core values in place.
Absolutely.
What would it take for GLCs perhaps to move into that realm?
Mindfulness and true intent and quite a fair bit of spirituality as well.
But how do you translate that into working values? How do you make sure that goes down equally with one employee
to another.
Yeah.
I think there are some companies that do it brilliantly because they are very, very clear about their values. So number one, clarity of the value, why that value is right at the top and why it's non-negotiable. And then moving into a format of the whole cycle of employee, right? From hiring people who believe in that value all the way to promoting and then firing or developing or moving that person around based on those core values. What I feel is happening right now in organizations or even as normal human beings, we are hypocritical. We say that we believe in something, we value something, but sometimes our behavior is different because our think and do quotient in any human being is very, very poor. What we think, how we feel, and what we do, the quotient is always a question mark.
Yeah.
So the other part that is truly missing, that I think some of the leading companies in the world, what they're really doing is that they are having non-negotiables when it comes to non-behavior or non-compliance to those values. So say, for example, Jack Ma, for example, would say very often that it's not about having a superstar. So I'm not interested in having the best person. I'm interested in having what oils the team in a particular format that would get us to where we're going at. And I think in organizations these days, there's still very limited courage to just put our foots down and say that that behavior is not on or that is not acceptable. And then, saying that we don't approve of, we don't condone these kind of things.
Right, so perhaps to be a little bit more assertive and strict on what values are not welcomed, as opposed to perhaps in the past being quite lax about it or sort of sweeping things under the carpet.
Yeah, and I think previously a lot of it was so why people didn't get, why people didn't experience the consequences of non-compliant behavior or poor performance was because revenue was always a more important thing. Like, okay, say for example, if there's a sales director and he's, really bringing a lot of revenue, but then he's also not very respectful. But he's bringing so much revenue, but he's not respectful. Let's just keep him here for a little while longer.
But then in itself, you've got the brand value versus the organization culture, which is already at
clash.
Having a clash. That's right.
Yeah.
Hazel, before I let you go, as usual, we run out of time when the conversation gets very interesting. How do you see the next perhaps decade forward in terms of improving organizational culture overall, or the whole psyche of an organization to sort of, propel themselves to excellence?
I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I can put my last dollar and bet on experiences. I think a lot more organizations, a lot more leaders should be invested in to gain as much experience and the exposure from world-class mentality and world-class mindset. And I think this is where I think certain ministries like education, like Ministry of Education, has a huge component to play, because if you're investing in people's mindsets and the way that they think about things, you will have a country that thinks about things well, and therefore does things probably well as well. So I would bet on more, if there is more budget or more investment in creating experiences for business leaders, talent, even general individuals like you and I, giving us investments or budgets for us to experience world-class mentality outside of Malaysia and within Malaysia, because there are amazing companies here too. I think that experience will shape our new beliefs, and our new beliefs will shape our actions and therefore our results.
And of course then leading us to truly a new Malaysia. Thank you so much, Hetal, for being in the studios with us. It was a pleasure speaking to you. That's all the time we have on The Nation today. We hope that you found that conversation fruitful. Keep it locked on to Bernama News Channel for more updates coming your way. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trendy orangnya. Setahun 5-6 kali tukar telefon. Tunggu. Jangan main belia